Final Fantasy VII Remake. How can I explain this? What's my relationship with this game? Well, I would explain it as if Final Fantasy VII Remake, I have a love-hate relationship with this game because on one end, I really enjoy what they have done with the characters and how they interpret it and made it closer to the original compared to what they have done with the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. And of course, the combat, very engaging, very addictive, and really enjoy what they've done, despite the fact that I was hoping that it was turn-based, but they've done a good job with the combat system. And then of course, on the other end, the negative side of the spectrum of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And you guys already know what it is. It's the story. I don't like the liberties they have taken, unnecessary changes to the story, and the illusion, or they're alluding to fate, destiny, and maybe a possible alternate timelines. It was unnecessary, and you guys already know my opinions on it. But besides that fact, I do give Square Enix credit where it's due when it comes to their interpretation of Midgar itself. They really done a really good job with Midgar, and Midgar is in fact one of the most popular locations and most recognizable locations in gaming history. Even if you haven't even played Final Fantasy VII before, you definitely know what it is once you look at Midgar itself. You cannot not know what Midgar is as far as that's concerned. Now, the reason why I made this video is because I really wanted to take a farther look into Midgar itself, because I've always been wondering, you know, how does it function as a city and how does it impact its citizens? And this is what I really wanted to talk about, for the fact is that President Shinra himself is the mastermind behind all of this. So this is why I wanted to get into it in this video. Now, 2 months ago, I had purchased an interesting piece of literature right here, which is called the Final Fantasy VII Remake Material Ultimania. Now, in this book, they have really took the liberties to go into much more details. I mean, so much detail to the point that it explains things in this book that the game itself didn't explain. And they have a lot of information and secret hints of how certain characters behave, and more importantly, it goes in depth and even have more details on Midgar itself. So that's what brought me into this. And plus, the Ultimania is good literature and is good content that I can pull out for more Final Fantasy VII Remake content here on this channel. So we're going to dive right into it, because this is, I think, is pretty unique and pretty fun. I think it's pretty interesting to know how Midgar functioned as a mega city and the impact that Shinra itself as a company has on the lives of people who live in this city. So we're going to dive into it right now. Now, first of all, let's just go through Midgar in general, or Shinra in general. Now, first of all, Shinra started off, of course, as an electrical company, and also they have a weapon manufacturing department as well. Now, the thing is, they eventually became a superpower once they stumbled upon this energy called micro energy, and it ended up making them one of the world leading energy distributor around the world of Final Fantasy VII. And they became so powerful to the point they even established their own military government. Now that's crazy. Can you just imagine that? Just how ridiculous is that electrical company that has so much money, power, and influence over the lives of everyone who lives in Midgar? Can you just imagine how that would translate, or you could find a comparison to in the real world? Like, for example, is Pico Energy here in the United States. Pico Energy is where most people pay their electrical bill. This company has been around for years. Can you imagine Pico Energy becoming so powerful that they have their own military and influence over the world, and they became the only world superpower in energy distribution? Can you imagine that? How scary that is? They influence everything. That's how powerful Shinra has become because of the micro energy. So let's talk about President Shinra, because President Shinra is the foundation, the core foundation behind Shinra itself and the company. So the thing is, there's a lot of mystery surrounding President Shinra. The original game doesn't really explain much about him. We just know that he's just some evil corporate guy, you know, the typical twirly mustache villain that everybody that the game or tells you to hate, because this guy, all he cares about is money, power, and respect. And we heard that somewhere before. So the thing is about President Shinra is that we don't know much about him, but the Ultimania give us some clues, give us some hints, and even within the game itself. Now, there's a segment in the game, especially the last 3 chapters of Final Fantasy VII Remake, where you actually take a tour and explore the museum in the Shinra building, and you get a little glimpse of what President Shinra is like. Now, you do see that he has a golden statue of himself, he has golden pistols and everything, so the guy is quite vain. But as human beings, we all aren't born that way. We aren't just born to be evil or born to be stuck on ourselves or be greedy. So my question is, was he once a noble man, or a man who did have some kind of compassion at some point in his life? Now, in my opinion, I believe at one point he probably did. But the thing is, despite the hate that you may have for President Shinra, you have to give him credit that this man had a goal, he had a vision, and he set forth on this vision, and he made it become a reality. Now, I have to give that's dedication right there, and not many people in life ever pursue their dreams or even make any of their dreams a reality, but President Shinra did. And also, he believed in hard work, and to the point that he even worked on the reactors and Midgar itself. And the crazy thing about it is, Barrett even mentioned it himself. If you, there's one segment within the game where you're about to infiltrate Sector 7, he mentioned about the plates and about the solar plant panels. And he said, it was said that President Shinra actually built this himself, that he was on the front lines of building this. He wasn't just some business guy who just sat back, but he also got his hands dirty as well, which it says a lot about him and his vision and his goals, that he wants to see this a reality. But the thing about ambition, if ambition goes unchecked, it can also be a demise. And sad to say, that's what happened to President Shinra himself. The thing is, once he stumbled upon the Mako energy, and that's what I believe, that's where it all began, the Mako energy. I think that's what pretty much warped his mind and gave him the mindset that he had to the day of his death. The thing is, once he stumbled upon the Mako energy, which is also the light source of the energy, and after his research and expanding his empire, he discovered that there was an ancient race called the Cetra, and these are the people who communicated with the planet. And the myth is, or the legend says, that there's this place called the Promised Land, where he believes that there's an infinite source of Mako energy, and he wants to build this ultimate utopia called Neo Midgar. And that was his dream, and sadly his unchecked ambition and his dream caused him his demise one day. And now that his son Rufus has stepped into the picture, he had taken over as the president of Shinra, and also taking on his father's legacy, or so we think, and we'll discuss that in a later video. Now, the question is, how was Midgar built? How was it built? Because how a monolith city such as Midgar, and you see how it's built, it looks ridiculous. Now, I wouldn't even ask real life architects, is a city like Midgar and how it was built and its infrastructure, is it even possible? Does it even make sense to build a city like Midgar where it has 2 plates? You have the upper and you have the lower plate. Is that something that's feasible? Does it make sense? Or is this just simply just fantasy? Now, the thing is, Shinra's reputation for being the leading corporation of energy distribution had sold its people a dream. Now, this is the thing. As I was playing through the chapters, I have noticed something. You know, have you ever just played a game where you just exploring, or just say an RPG, you just exploring around and you just stop and you pause the game, or you just stop the character for a second and you say to yourself, I wonder what it's like to live here, or I wonder what it's like for the citizens of this place and how they feel, and what's the government like, and how do they deal with the monsters that constantly lurk outside where they live. And that's what happened with this game. When I was doing my 3rd playthrough where we was infiltrating Shinra, I just moved around and just stopped for a second and just panned the camera around, and I'm just looking at the infrastructure, and I said to myself, man, like, how did man build something like this? Like, how long you would think it would take 100 years to build such a big city such as Midgar, especially when you have 2 plates, a city on top of another city. How is that even feasible? And that's what I said to myself, how can they get this city done in a short amount of time. And then that's when I looked into the Ultimania to see if there's any questions to this. And guess what? Yes, there's some details on how the city was built and how President Shinra was able to get the city built at such a fast pace. And it took about like 30 years. And that's still a short period of time for a city such as Midgar. How was he able to pull it off? Now, due to Shinra's reputation as being the world leading distributor of energy, they had so much influence over the world, to the point that Shinra even sold the people a dream of a utopia. And he wanted people to become part of his dream and of his vision. So he sold the people around the world this dream of an ultimate utopia and the ultimate place to be. And people had jumped on board with this dream. And the promise was, if you come in and you help me build Midgar, I promise to give you residential permits in order for you to live on the upper plates for those who came in and made that sacrifice to help me build this dream and to build this vision. And that's what lured people out. People from different regions of the world came to Midgar and helped President Shinra to build this massive city. Now, of course, during the development of this city, of course, there came problems. There came a whole lot of problems when trying to build something as colossal as Midgar. There came a lot of death. Different people from all over the world came to build this, and a lot of people died during the construction. Sometimes even one of the sectors within the upper plate had fell and crashed and crumbled people on the lower plates and killed many of people. It's similar to how, give you a perfect example to the real world, the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall of China is called the Great Wall for a reason. And the thing is, during history of how the wall was built, many people died building that wall, to the point where they buried people within the wall. The wall became a tombstone. The wall became a grave from many of the workers who died to put this wall together to fend off its enemies from the border. And this was no different found here in Midgar itself. Now, what about the plates? Because Midgar has plates. You have the upper plates and you also have the lower plates. And what I respect and what I like about this Ultimania, it even goes in depth and it fleshes out the plates itself, which is pretty dope. Now, what is the Midgar plates? Now, the thing is, Midgar and President Shinra wanted to design these plates. Now, these plates is a representation, or it's a monolith, or it's a symbol for class. Shinra and Midgar is so deeply entrenched in classism. It's based on a class system where the upper class, the middle to upper class, live on the top surface. Now, the thing about the upper plate is, the upper plate, a lot of these upper class, middle to upper class citizens who live on the top is allowed to partake in a lot of the luxuries of what Shinra and Midgar has to offer, meaning that there's an abundance of sunlight and of course an abundance of much more cleaner air compared to what's going on at the bottom of the plate. Now, the thing is, sectors 1 through 8 is where the upper and middle class citizens live at, and then if you continue to work hard in the middle class, you can eventually get to the other sectors. Now, within the middle of Midgar itself, which is Sector 0, is where Shinra himself and the corporation is home and housed. And this is where they make all their plans and how they expand their empire and how they continue the construction of Midgar itself. Like, as I played the original and also Final Fantasy VII Remake, when I look at the game and I look at the plates, I was just like, okay, well, this seemed like it's just a design choice. They just wanted to make this game look more like a, how would I say it? I wouldn't say cyberpunk. Well, I guess you could say cyberpunk, but the design choices is something that they wanted to go with as far as aesthetics is concerned. It's just an aesthetic design choice that I believe it was. But no, there was a purpose behind the upper plates and lower plates. Now, the thing is, it's so crazy how they designed these plates, because the lower plates, and which is about to get crazy and get nutty for a second, the upper plates was designed in a way where it blocks out sunlight. And because it blocks out the sunlight, which is very, very, it's just crazy how it is. The people at the lower plates are very malnourished, and they malnourished is because there's no sunlight. There's no sunlight at all that the people ever get from the lower plates. And also the bad effect about the reactors is the reactors also affects the land. It affects the soil where you cannot grow plants. So all the citizens that live at the bottom of these plates, they can't grow their own food. So they have to rely on Shinra themselves, or they have to live off the scraps or live off of the creatures of that area in order to get the nourishment that they can possibly get. And that's really a sad thing. And can you imagine the children that's like affected by this and what that does to a person's DNA living underneath something like that? And also it has bad air, and Barrett also mentioned about the air and also of what the plates do above, you know. And there's a segment in the game at the very beginning on the train where Cloud and Barrett have a discussion.
Great big pizza in the sky that people down there gotta struggle to survive. Shinra sucks up Mako while the soil turns to dust, the air fills with smog, and the flowers die.
Then leave and don't look back. That's what's always worked for me.
Well, that's all well and good, if you're only out for yourself. But the folks down there don't have the luxury of choice, you know.
And the reason for that is, I want to talk about the inhabitants of the lower plates. And it's really interesting that the Ultimania has shed light on this. There's a lot of people who live in the slums, and people who are affected by the Mako and affected for the lack of sunlight. The thing about it is, what's so cruel about the lower plates and how the inhabitants became who they are, and why they have no choice in their current living situations and their financial situations, is because of what President Shinra has done. And it's really sad. For the fact is that the people who live at the lower plates are loved ones of the workers who helped build Midgar to the colossal masterpiece or infrastructure that it is to this very day. And these are people who died building it. And the thing is, President Shinra had promised these workers and promised these families that he was going to give them residential permits to live on the upper plates. And guess what? He fell through on that promise. He lied to a lot of these workers. And since he lied to these workers, a lot of these families and these workers had took a chance, took a risk, and pretty much followed a lie. And they went on and followed Shinra's dreams just to come here, and didn't get the access or the permits to the upper levels. And since they didn't have that, and these workers end up dying, these people end up becoming poor. They became vagrants, and these places became desolate. And that's the result of the lower plates. The lower plates comprise of families and loved ones of people who worked, and people who also had died during the Wu-Tai War. And this is where the orphanage come from in Sector 5 slums. Most of these children are children of families or loved ones who died and sacrificed their lives to build Midgar to what it is today. And as a result, these kids don't have a mother, don't have a father. They don't have any loved ones there to protect them and provide for them, because they died in a man's vision. They died for a greedy man's vision at that point. And that's so sad. And it's crazy that there is some depth to Midgar itself and reasons behind why Midgar is the way it is. Now, this is the thing. How is Midgar able to keep such a hold over the people, such a control over its citizens, especially at the lower plate? How are these people so content with their living? Well, there's a simple reason for that and an explanation, because also in the Ultimania, it explains that the citizens of Midgar have no access to the internet or information. It's because Midgar controls the media. And does that sound familiar to you? Midgar spends a lot of time and money. If anything happens, bad happens underneath Midgar's rule and control, they will pay off the media to pretty much deter people away from the real story. So pretty much Shinra is providing the media fake news. So there's fake news going around all throughout Midgar itself. And they don't allow the citizens to have any form of internet access, meaning that the citizens can't look up and research information to find out anything about Midgar or Shinra itself. So that means people can't get free form of information to think for themselves. So in order to control the citizens, to keep them humble and content with their current living, they control the media and how they portray their image. And that sounds quite similar to what we're experiencing right now in the real world in this current administration right now. There's a lot of fake news that's going on in the media, and you can see it going on here and with Midgar. And I think that's a pretty interesting take and a pretty in-depth take that they had pretty much had interweaved when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake and Midgar itself. And that's pretty much it for this. Like, I found it quite interesting of, you know, how deep and how in depth that the Ultimania has decided to put into Midgar itself. There's a whole lot of information, and I can't wait to pull out more when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake and how they established this reimagined world of Final Fantasy VII. But that pretty much wraps up this video. I definitely want to hear your thoughts. Have you heard any of this information before? Do you find this information interesting as far as President Shinra and how Midgar was built and how the inhabitants of the lower plates are pretty much people and of loved ones who had died helping President Shinra build this magnificent city, which is called Midgar? I definitely want to hear your thoughts in the comment sections below, and definitely let me know what else you want to know about Final Fantasy VII Remake in this world found in the Ultimania, and I'll pretty much see if the book has it, and I make a video about it. I just found it pretty interesting. So if you like the video, hit the like button. Hit that subscribe button because it really helps me out in the algorithm. And if you want to stay up to date with more JRPG news or Final Fantasy VII Remake news, hit that bell to be notified. This is Mugen Lord signing off. I'll see you Game Fiends later. Peace out.